We are joined now by Democratic Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware. Senator, appreciate you taking the time, as we just laid out, talking about 750,000 Americans set to be furloughed due to this government shutdown. What do you say to those workers who may soon not see a paycheck?
Well, first of all, I take a step back and say, on day one, the president promised to lower costs. We're 254 days in, and not only are energy costs up, food costs are up, but we are on the precipice of healthcare costs going up. So those workers are already feeling the pain. And then, I was former Secretary of Labor in Delaware. Doesn't take a Secretary of Labor to know that when you fire and furlough people, they're going to be hurting and our unemployment numbers are going to go up. And so in this moment, it was important for Democrats to say, this is not business as usual. We are on the brink of a healthcare crisis. And so that's what we're standing up for. And we are standing up for those American workers.
Listen to what we heard from the vice president this morning, blaming Democrats for the shutdown.
Unfortunately, it was one faction of one branch of government, the far left faction of the Senate Democrats, who decided to shut down the people's government. There are critical services that the Democrats have taken hostage because they have a policy disagreement that they are open to work with us on, but they shouldn't be shutting the government down because of that policy disagreement.
What is your response to that?
Well, first of all, this isn't simply about a policy disagreement. Literally, 4th of July, this administration and the Republicans in Congress took away health care from folks. And so what we were saying is restore that health care before this becomes a catastrophe and people are hurt even more. I think it's also important to remember that the White House, the Senate, and the House are controlled by Republicans. And so I was a House member. When I was in the House, we negotiated. And what we're seeing here is not a level of seriousness. If you're serious, you don't go home. You would be here. And that's what we say to the House of Representatives. If you're serious, you would be listening to the people and you would not be canceling out their health care. You would not be doing memes. This is a serious moment, and what we need is for them to come to the table seriously on behalf of the American people.
But is there a plan B in case that doesn't happen? Should this shutdown drag out and Republicans dig in, Democrats can't get what you're asking for when it comes to those health care subsidies and the fight for health care funding?
Here's the reality. They have the power. They're in charge. They need to come to the table. And what I'm seeing and feeling at home in Delaware, I have a business person, Jan, who actually suffered from cancer. When I was in the House, she told me if it were not for the Affordable Care Act, she would not have been able to have health care. She is concerned. She represents the half of small business owners are on the Affordable Care Act. When you look at farmers and ranchers in this country, 1/4 on the Affordable Care Act. When you look at moms and babies and the number of births that are given because of our health care.
Employee for 8 years as a civil engineer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and now he is the co-executive director of the Federal Unionist Network and Advocacy Group that represents federal workers. Chris, great to have you here with us. So you were part of the federal government as a federal worker earlier this year at the start of the Trump administration. You were there as DOGE came in, took a hatchet to so many federal positions. What's going through your mind right now as we are just kind of settling into this shutdown with a looming threat of more firings?
Yeah. I mean, this administration has been shutting down the federal government piece by piece all year long. They clearly, and that clip shows it, see this as yet another opportunity to shut down more of the government, not temporarily, but permanently. And so the question to us as federal workers who have a gun to our head in this negotiation saying if Schumer and Jeffries don't cave, they're going to fire more of us, we have a choice to make. Do we take the hostage position and say anything to save us? Or do we recognize that we took an oath to the American people, that we are here to serve their interests, and that if we need to suffer a few weeks of a shutdown to preserve the public interest that the federal government is supposed to uphold, you know what? We might have a little bit more free time on our hands to explain to the American people all the things that we do for them and all the ways that this administration has been gutting civil rights protections at HUD. We saw the whistleblowers last week who got fired. Climate research at NASA and the EPA. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and all the things that it does to protect consumers' interests. The NLRB and FLRA are basically defunct organizations. All of the ways in which the federal government protects or is supposed to protect the public and regular, hardworking people, this administration has shown all year long they're committed to shutting all those things down. A little temporary shutdown for a political fight, we're ready.
What are you hearing from your former colleagues? We're talking about some 750,000 workers. 750,000. That's a huge amount of the federal workforce, not all, but that's a lot of people, and they're going to be impacted. Their families are going to be hurt if they are not getting paid. What are they worried about?
We've been hurt all year long, and this is the negotiation tactics of a bully and a wannabe dictator. Let's be very clear. This isn't like, some tough bargaining from a Trump who just wants to draw a hard line to get his position. This is a wannabe dictator, a wannabe strongman, a guy who has glorified every strong leader internationally who has trod over democratic rights of their people. We're looking at a playbook. They're hollowing out the expertise of the civil service. They're punishing dissent in every form that it takes. They're sidelining every independent agency. This is straight out of the playbook of dictators and authoritarians all over the world today and through history. We need Congress to reject the fear tactics, to refuse all bad deals, and to protect the services that the federal government is meant to provide. Because if Trump wins this shutdown, then the American people lose the government that is supposed to protect their interests potentially permanently. The stakes are much higher than the next few weeks.
It sounds like you are not buying the president's argument or the Republican Party's line that this shutdown's the Democrats' fault.
Well, obviously not. Who's been shutting down the government all year long? Whose political movement is founded upon Grover Norquist's words back in the 1990s, who said he doesn't want to kill the federal government. He just wants it to whittle down to the size that he can drown it in the bathtub. These are ideologues who serve nothing but the smallest number of billionaires who have all the wealth in our society, who want to repurpose the entire federal government in their interests and make it so that the hardworking people who are struggling paycheck to paycheck, who need the services of Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, the SNAP benefits, all the people who are most vulnerable in our society are the ones who stand to lose the most. And federal workers are ready for this fight, even if they're doing it with a gun to our head. But we're sick of it. They've been pushing us to it. And we're ready to fight Donald Trump because we're not going to let him take our country into this direction any further.
There are federal workers living paycheck to paycheck, right? So, the last government shutdown we mentioned lasted 34 days. That was the longest ever. That's a couple of paychecks. Do federal workers have anywhere to turn to for help?
Look, Congress at the last shutdown passed a bill afterwards saying that all federal workers will get paid retroactively. We'll see whether this administration respects any laws anymore and actually enforces that. But in the meantime, there are resources out there.
The GOP is repeating what the New York Times calls a new and misleading talking point, that Democrats are shutting down the government to fund free health care for unauthorized immigrants. The false assertion, has been repeated by Vice President J.D. Vance and Speaker Mike Johnson, along with the president himself. Here's what is important to note. Undocumented immigrants have long been prohibited from taxpayer-funded Medicaid coverage, except for treatment in emergency medical situations. They also do not qualify for Medicaid and Medicare. The fight on Capitol Hill is over reimbursements that allow hospitals to recoup the costs of emergency care in certain cases. The president's massive spending bill had limited those federal dollars, which is what Republicans are looking to keep in place. As CNBC reports, Democrats say they are only trying to restore health care coverage options that were available to some immigrants before those options were eliminated by President Trump's so-called one big, beautiful tax bill this year. Steve Ratner, can you add to that and talk about the economic impact of this shutdown?
Yeah, Mika, this is completely misleading on the part of the Republicans. And interestingly, this provision's been around for 4 years, and I don't recall anybody talking about how there was waste, fraud, and abuse. That's the Republican favorite talking point, of course. When they want to attack a program, they say it's all waste, fraud, and abuse. This is just subsidies for normal health care for normal Americans who are further down in the economic ladder to make health care affordable when they buy it on the ACA exchanges. That is the core of the fight. The Democrats have asked for some other stuff, but obviously there's a negotiation, and probably most of that won't happen. This is at the core of it. Essentially, let me just step back and put this also in perspective. In the first term, Trump talked all the time about overturning Obamacare, repealing Obamacare, and then famously John McCain voted against it. It stayed in place. You have not heard the Republicans talk about repealing Obamacare for a long time, but that is what they are doing. In the one big beautiful bill, there are a bunch of changes in Medicaid, and then you have this provision that
Go ahead, keep going.
And there was this provision that did not get expired. And when you add it all up, all the stuff they've done in about one big beautiful bill plus this would reduce the number of Americans who got health care under Obamacare by 70%. It would effectively unwind 70% of Obamacare in this very stealth way without ever saying that's what they're doing.
And is this also the cuts that some of them come after the midterms?
Yes, the Medicaid cuts. So
people don't feel them until after the midterms.
The Medicaid cuts come after the midterms. But for something like 20 million Americans who are buying their insurance through the exchanges, which is what this fight is about, when you go out and buy it in exchanges, you're going to feel it right away. The health insurance companies have already filed their premiums for next year, and the average premium increase will be 18% because of this expiration of this provision. So even the ones who still don't get subsidies, still buy in the exchanges, are going to see much higher premiums right away, not after the midterms.
And we should underline again, Brez, there is a federal law that says people here without legal status cannot get taxpayer money for health care. Under Medicaid, Medicare, or the ACA, it's against federal law. And Democrats say they have no plans to change that. They don't know where this made-up talking point is coming from. But let's talk about...
Workers are furious. And what's good is Democrats are leaning into this. Working class people, whether it's the people laid off or working class people that are going to be the ones disproportionately that lose their health care. Because remember, a lot of working class people don't have excellent health insurance and need to rely on the premiums that have been negotiated and whatnot to have basic to decent health care. And it also needs to be said that a lot of workplaces don't offer health insurance, right? And some people rely on public subsidies to have health care. And that includes the capitalists, because these companies that don't give their workers insurance benefit when the government gives them insurance, because that allows them to have those workers not, be uncovered, right? It almost gives them a bonus because their workers get the coverage from somewhere else. All this to be said, many of the people that get like Medicaid, for example, already work. This idea that it's a bunch of lazy people. Some don't work because they can't, but many of the people do. And it's these working class people who, again, have jobs, are looking for jobs, are trying to improve their life. They're going to be the ones that lose health care. And so Donald is, again, like he did his first term and like he did earlier in this term, he is cutting your essential services to give trillions over the years, trillions, to the millionaires and billionaires and the biggest, most powerful corporations. For Trump, it's America's working class last.